Shiva, Shiva, Sanskrit, Shiv lit. The Auspicious One, Śiva, IAST, Śiva, also known as Mahadeva, Sanskrit mBDP, lit. The great god Mahadeva is one of the principal deities of Hinduism. He is the supreme being in Shaivism, one of the major traditions within Hinduism. Shiva has pre-Vedic tribal roots, and the figure of Shiva, as we know him today, is an amalgamation of various older non-Vedic and Vedic deities, including the Rigvedic storm god Rudra, who may also have non-Vedic origins, into a single major deity. Shiva is known as the destroyer within the Trimurti, the triple deity of supreme divinity that includes Brahma and Vishnu. In the Shaivite tradition, Shiva is the supreme lord who creates, protects, and transforms the universe. In the Shakta tradition, the goddess or Devi is described as one of the supreme, yet Shiva is revered along with Vishnu and Brahma. A goddess is stated to be the energy and creative power Shakti of each, with Parvati Sati the equal complementary partner of Shiva. He is one of the 5 equivalent deities in Panchayatana Puja of the Smarta tradition of Hinduism. Shiva is the primal Atman self of the universe. There are many both benevolent and fearsome depictions of Shiva. In benevolent aspects, he is depicted as an omniscient yogi who lives an ascetic life on Mount Kailash, as well as a householder with wife Parvati and his 2 children, Ganesha and Kartikeya. In his fierce aspects, he is often depicted slaying demons. Shiva is also known as Adiyogi Shiva, regarded as the patron god of yoga, meditation, and arts. The iconographical attributes of Shiva are the serpent around his neck, the adorning crescent moon, the holy river Ganga flowing from his matted hair, the third eye on his forehead, the Trishula or trident as his weapon, and the Damaru drum. He is usually worshipped in the aniconic form of lingam. Shiva is a pan-Hindu deity revered widely by Hindus in India, Nepal, and Sri Lanka. Etymology and other names. The Sanskrit word Siva Devanagari Shiv, also transliterated as Shiva, means, states Munir Williams, auspicious, propitious, gracious, benign, kind, benevolent, friendly. The roots of Siva in folk etymology are Si, which means in whom all things lie, pervasiveness, and Va, which means embodiment of grace. The word Shiva is used as an adjective in the Rig Veda approximately 1700–1100 BC, as an epithet for several Rigvedic deities, including Rudra. The term Shiva also connotes liberation, final emancipation, and the Auspicious One. This adjective sense of usage is addressed to many deities in Vedic layers of literature. The term evolved from the Vedic Rudra Shiva to the noun Shiva in the epics and the Puranas as an auspicious deity who is the creator, reproducer, and dissolver. Sharva presents another etymology with the Sanskrit root sarv, which means to injure or to kill, interprets the name to connote one who can kill the forces of darkness. The Sanskrit word Seva means relating to the god Shiva, and this term is the Sanskrit name both for one of the principal sects of Hinduism and for a member of that sect. It is used as an adjective to characterize certain beliefs and practices, such as Shaivism. The Vishnu Sahasranama interprets Shiva to have multiple meanings, the pure one, and the one who is not affected by 3 gunas of Prakriti, Sattva, Rajas, and Tamas. Shiva is known by many names such as Viswanatha, Lord of the Universe, Mahadeva, Mahandeya, Mahasu, Mahesha, Maheshvara, Shankara, Shambhu, Rudra, Hara, Trilachana, Devendra, Chief of the Gods, Nilakanta, Subhankara, Trilakanatha, Lord of the 3 Realms, and Jhneshwar, Lord of Compassion. The highest reverence for Shiva in Shaivism is reflected in his epithets Mahadeva, Great God, Maha, Great and Deva God, Mahesvara, Great Lord, Maha, Great and Isvara, Lord, and Paramesvara, Supreme Lord. Sahasranama are medieval Indian texts that list 1,000 names derived from aspects and epithets of a deity. There are at least 8 different versions of the Shiva Sahasranama, devotional hymns, stotras listing many names of Shiva. The version appearing in Book 13 Anusasana Parvan of the Mahabharata provides one such list. Shiva also has Dasha 10,000 names that are found in the Mahanyasa. The Shri Rudram Chavakam, also known as the Satarudriya, is a devotional hymn to Shiva hailing him by many names. Historical development and literature, assimilation of traditions, pre-Vedic elements, prehistoric art. Scholars have interpreted early prehistoric paintings at the Bhimbetka rock shelters, considered to be from Preminis 10,000 BCE period, as Shiva dancing, Shiva's trident, and his Mount Nandi. Rock paintings from Bhimbetka, depicting a figure with a trident or trishul, have been described as Nataraja by Erwin Neumayer, who dates them to the Mesolithic. Indus Valley and the Pashupati seal. Of several Indus Valley seals that show animals, one seal that has attracted attention shows a large central figure, either horned or wearing a horned headdress, and possibly ithaphallic, seated in a posture reminiscent of the lotus position, surrounded by animals. This figure was named by early excavators of Mohenjo-Daro as Pashupati, Lord of Animals, Sanskrit Pasipati, an epithet of the later Hindu deities Shiva and Rudra. Sir John Marshall and others suggested that this figure is a prototype of Shiva with three faces, seated in a yoga posture with the knees out and feet joined. Semicircular shapes on the head were interpreted as two horns. Scholars such as Gavin Flood, John Key, and Doris Meth Srinivasan have expressed doubts about this suggestion. Gavin Flood states that it is not clear from the seal that the figure has three faces, is seated in a yoga posture, or even that the shape is intended to represent a human figure. He characterizes these views as speculative, but adds that it is nevertheless possible that there are echoes of Shaiva iconographic themes, such as half-moon shapes resembling the horns of a bull. John Key writes that he may indeed be an early manifestation of Lord Shiva as Pashupati, but a couple of his specialties of this figure does not match with Rudra. Writing in 1997, Srinivasan interprets what John Marshall interpreted as facial as not human. The interpretation of the seal continues to be disputed. McEvely, for example, states that it is not possible to account for this posture outside the yogic account. Asko Parpola states that other archaeological finds such as the early Elamite seals dated to 3000–2750 BC show similar figures, and these have been interpreted as seated bull and not a yogi, and the bovine interpretation is likely more accurate. Gregory L. Passel in 2002 associated it with the water buffalo and concluded that while it would be appropriate to recognize the figure as a deity and its posture as one of ritual discipline, regarding it as a proto-Shiva would go too far. Vedic elements. According to Antony, the Old Indic religion probably emerged among Indo-European immigrants in the contact zone between the Zarafshan River, present-day Uzbekistan, and present-day Iran. It was a syncretic mixture of Old Central Asian and New Indo-European elements, which, according to Beckwith, borrowed distinctive religious beliefs and practices from the Bactria Margiana culture. At least 383 non-Indo-European words were borrowed from this culture, including the god Indra and the ritual drink soma. Proto-Indo-European elements. The Vedic beliefs and practices of the pre-classical era were closely related to the hypothesized Proto-Indo-European religion and the pre-Islamic Indo-Iranian religion. The similarities between the iconography and theologies of Shiva with Greek and European deities have led to proposals for an Indo-European link for Shiva or lateral exchanges with ancient Central Asian cultures. His contrasting aspects, such as being terrifying or blissful depending on the situation, are similar to those of the Greek god Dionysus, as are their iconic associations with bull, snakes, anger, bravery, dancing, and carefree life. The ancient Greek texts of the time of Alexander the Great call Shiva as Indian Dionysus, or alternatively call Dionysus as god of the Orient. Similarly, the use of phallic symbol as an icon for Shiva is also found for Irish, Nordic, Greek Dionysus, and Roman deities, as was the idea of this aniconic column linking heaven and earth among early Indo-Aryans, states Roger Woodward. Others contest such proposals and suggest Shiva to have emerged from indigenous pre-Aryan tribal origins. Rudra, Shiva as we know him today, shares many features with the Vedic god Rudra, and both Shiva and Rudra are viewed as the same personality in Hindu scriptures. The two names are used synonymously. Rudra, a Rigvedic deity with fearsome powers, was the god of the roaring storm. He is usually portrayed in accordance with the element he represents as a fierce, destructive deity. In RV 2.33, he is described as the father of the Rudras, a group of storm gods. Flood notes that Rudra is an ambiguous god, peripheral in the Vedic pantheon, possibly indicating non-Vedic origins. Nevertheless, both Rudra and Shiva are akin to Wotan, the Germanic god of rage and the wild hunt. According to ﷺ, during the development of the Hindu synthesis, attributes of the Buddha were transferred by Brahmins to Shiva, who was also linked with Rudra. The Rigveda has 3 out of 1028 hymns dedicated to Rudra, and he finds occasional mention in other hymns of the same text. Hymn 10.92 of the Rigveda states that deity Rudra has 2 natures, one wild and cruel Rudra, another that is kind and tranquil Shiva. The term Shiva also appears simply as an epithet that means kind, auspicious, one of the adjectives used to describe many different Vedic deities. While fierce, ruthless natural phenomenon and storm-related Rudra is feared in the hymns of the Rigveda, the beneficial rains he brings are welcomed as Shiva aspect of him. This healing, nurturing, life-enabling aspect emerges in the Vedas as Rudra Shiva, and in post-Vedic literature ultimately as Shiva, who combines the destructive and constructive powers, the terrific and the gentle, as the ultimate recycler and rejuvenator of all existence. The Vedic texts do not mention bull or any animal as the transport vehicle vahana of Rudra or other deities. However, post-Vedic texts such as the Mahabharata and the Puranas state the Nandi bull, the Indian zebu, in particular, as the vehicle of Rudra and of Shiva, thereby unmistakably linking them as same. Agni. Rudra and Agni have a close relationship. The identification between Agni and Rudra in the Vedic literature was an important factor in the process of Rudra's gradual transformation into Rudra Shiva. The identification of Agni with Rudra is explicitly noted in the Narukta, an important early text on etymology, which says Agni is also called Rudra. The interconnections between the two deities are complex, and according to Stella Kramrisch, the fire myth of Rudra Shiva plays on the whole gamut of fire, valuing all its potentialities and phases, from conflagration to illumination. In the Satarudriya, some epithets of Rudra, such as Sasapanjara of golden red hue as of flame and Tivisamati flaming bright, suggest a fusing of the two deities. Agni is said to be a bull, and Lord Shiva possesses a bull as his vehicle, Nandi. The horns of Agni, who is sometimes characterized as a bull, are mentioned. In medieval sculpture, both Agni and the form of Shiva known as Bhairava have flaming hair as a special feature. Indra. According to Wendy Doniger, the Saivite fertility myths and some of the phallic characteristics of Shiva are inherited from Indra. Doniger gives several reasons for her hypothesis. Both are associated with mountains, rivers, male fertility, fierceness, fearlessness, warfare, the transgression of established mores, the Om sound, the supreme self. In the Rig Veda, the term Siva is used to refer to Indra. 2.20, 3, 6.45, 17, and 8.93, 3. Indra, like Shiva, is likened to a bull. In the Rig Veda, Rudra is the father of the Maruts, but he is never associated with their warlike exploits as is Indra. Indra himself was adopted by the Vedic Aryans from the Bactria Margiana culture. According to Antony, many of the qualities of Indo-Iranian god of might/victory, Varahthragna, were transferred to the adopted god Indra, who became the central deity of the developing Old Indic culture. Indra was the subject of 250 hymns, a quarter of the Rig Veda. He was associated more than any other deity with Soma, a stimulant drug perhaps derived from ephedra, probably borrowed from the Bhimic religion. His rise to prominence was a peculiar trait of the old Indic speakers. The texts and artwork of Jainism show Indra as a dancer, although not identical, generally resembling the dancing Shiva artwork found in Hinduism, particularly in their respective mudras. For example, in the Jain caves at Ellora, extensive carvings show dancing Indra next to the images of Tirthankaras in a manner similar to Shiva Nataraja. The similarities in the dance iconography suggests that there may be a link between ancient Indra and Shiva. Development. A few texts such as Atharvashira's Upanishad mention Rudra and assert all gods are Rudra, everyone and everything is Rudra, and Rudra is the principle found in all things, their highest goal, the innermost essence of all reality that is visible or invisible. The Kaivalya Upanishad similarly states Paul Deussen, a German Indologist and professor of philosophy, describes the self-realized man as who feels himself only as the one divine essence that lives in all, who feels identity of his and everyone's consciousness with Shiva, highest Atman, who has found this highest Atman within in the depths of his heart. Rudra's evolution from a minor Vedic deity to a supreme being is first evidenced in the ﷺ Upanishad 400–200 BC, according to Gavin Flood, presenting the earliest seeds of theistic devotion to Rudra Shiva. Here Rudra Shiva is identified as the creator of the cosmos and liberator of selves from the birth-rebirth cycle. The period of 200 BC to 180 also marks the beginning of the Shaiva tradition, focused on the worship of Shiva as evidenced in other literature of this period. Other scholars such as Robert Hume and Doris Srinivasan state that the ﷺ Upanishad presents pluralism, pantheism or henotheism, rather than being a text just on Shiva theism. Shaiva devotees and ascetics are mentioned in Patanjali's Mahabhasya 2nd century BCE and in the Mahabharata. The earliest iconic artworks of Shiva may be from Gandhara and northwest parts of ancient India. There is some uncertainty, as the artwork that has survived is damaged, and they show some overlap with meditative Buddha-related artwork. But the presence of Shiva's trident and phallic symbolism in this art suggests it was likely Shiva. Numismatics research suggests that numerous coins of the ancient Kushan Empire 30–375 CE that have survived were images of a god who is probably Shiva. The Shiva in Kushan coins is referred to as ঈশ্ব of unclear etymology and origins, but the simultaneous presence of Indra and Shiva in the Kushan era artwork suggest that they were revered deities by the start of the Kushan Empire. The Shaiva Upanishads are a group of 14 minor Upanishads of Hinduism variously dated from the last centuries of the first millennium BC through the 17th century. These extol Shiva as the metaphysical unchanging reality Brahman. The Shaiva Puranas, particularly the Shiva Purana and the Linga Purana, present the various aspects of Shiva, mythologies, cosmology, and pilgrimage, tirtha associated with him. The Shiva-related Tantra literature, posed between the 8th and 11th centuries, are regarded in devotional dualistic Shaivism as sszruti. Dualistic Shaiva agamas, which consider self within each living being and Shiva as two separate realities, dualism, Dvaita, are the foundational texts for Shaiva Siddhanta. Other Shaiva agamas teach that these are one reality, monism, Advaita, and that Shiva is the self, the perfection and truth within each living being. In Shiva-related sub-traditions, there are 10 dualistic agama texts, 18 qualified monism cum dualism agama texts, and 64 monism agama texts. Shiva-related literature developed extensively across India in the first millennium CE and through the 13th century, particularly in Kashmir and Tamil Shaiva traditions. The monist Shiva literature posit absolute oneness, that is, Shiva is within every man and woman, Shiva is within every living being, Shiva is present everywhere in the world including all non-living being, and there is no spiritual difference between life, matter, man and Shiva. The various dualistic and monist Shiva-related ideas were welcomed in medieval Southeast Asia, inspiring numerous Shiva-related temples, artwork, and texts in Indonesia, Myanmar, Cambodia, Laos, Vietnam, Thailand, and Malaysia, with syncretic integration of local pre-existing theologies. Position within Hinduism. Shaivism. Shaivism is one of the four major sects of Hinduism, the others being Vaishnavism, Shaktism, and the Smarta tradition. Followers of Shaivism, called Shaivas, revere Shiva as the supreme being. Shaivas believe that Shiva is all and in all, the creator, preserver, destroyer, revealer, and concealer of all that is. He is not only the creator in Shaivism, but he is also the creation that results from him. He is everything and everywhere. Shiva is the primal self, the pure consciousness and absolute reality in the Shaiva traditions. The Shaivism theology is broadly grouped into two: the popular theology influenced by Shiva Rudra in the Vedas epics, and the Puranas, and the esoteric theology influenced by the Shiva and Shakti-related Tantra texts. The Vedic Brahmanic Shiva theology includes both monist Advaita and devotional traditions Dvaita, such as Tamil Shaiva Siddhanta, and Lingaitism, with temples featuring items such as linga, Shiva Parvati iconography, bull Nandi within the premises, relief artwork showing mythologies and aspects of Shiva. The Tantric Shiva tradition ignored the mythologies and Puranas related to Shiva, and depending on the sub-school developed a variety of practices. For example, historical records suggest the Tantric Kapalikas literally, the skull men coexisted with and shared many Vajrayana Buddhist rituals, engaged in esoteric practices that revered Shiva and Shakti, wearing skulls, begged with empty skulls, used meat, alcohol, and sexuality as a part of ritual. In contrast, the esoteric tradition within Kashmir Shaivism has featured the Krama and Trika sub-traditions. The Krama sub-tradition focused on esoteric rituals around Shiva-Kali pair. The Trika sub-tradition developed a theology of triads involving Shiva, combined it with an ascetic lifestyle focusing on personal Shiva in the pursuit of monistic self-liberation. Vaishnavism. The Vaishnava Vishnu-oriented literature acknowledges and discusses Shiva. Like Shaiva literature that presents Shiva as supreme, the Vaishnava literature presents Vishnu as supreme. However, both traditions are pluralistic and revere both Shiva and Vishnu along with Divi. Their texts do not show exclusivism, and Vaishnava texts such as the Bhagavata Purana, while praising Krishna as the ultimate reality, also present Shiva and Shakti as a personalized form and equivalent to the same ultimate reality. The texts of Shaivism tradition similarly praise Vishnu. The Skanda Purana, for example, states, "Vishnu is no one but Shiva, and he who is called Shiva is but identical with Vishnu." Mythologies of both traditions include legends about who is superior, about Shiva paying homage to Vishnu, and Vishnu paying homage to Shiva. However, in texts and artwork of either tradition, the mutual salutes are symbolism for complementarity. The Mahabharata declares the unchanging ultimate reality Brahman to be identical to Shiva and to Vishnu, that Vishnu is the highest manifestation of Shiva, and Shiva is the highest manifestation of Vishnu. Shaktism. The goddess-oriented Shakti tradition of Hinduism is based on the premise that the supreme principle and the ultimate reality called Brahman is female Divi, but it treats the male as her equal and complementary partner. This partner is Shiva. The earliest evidence of the tradition of reverence for the feminine with Rudra-Shiva context is found in the Hindu scripture Rigveda, in a hymn called the Divi Sukta. The Divi Upanishad, in its explanation of the theology of Shaktism, mentions and praises Shiva such as in its verse 19. Shiva, along with Vishnu, is a revered god in the Divi Mahatmya, a text of Shaktism considered by the tradition to be as important as the Bhagavad Gita. The Ardhanarasvara concept commingles god Shiva and goddess Shakti by presenting an icon that is half man and half woman, a representation and theme of union found in many Hindu texts and temples. Smarta tradition. In the Smarta tradition of Hinduism, Shiva is a part of its Panchayatana puja. This practice consists of the use of icons or anakinds of 5 deities considered equivalent, set in a quincunx pattern. Shiva is one of the 5 deities, others being Vishnu, Divi such as Parvati, Surya, and Ganesha, or Skanda, or any personal god of devotees' preference ৰীষ্টha. Philosophically, the Smarta tradition emphasizes that all idols murti are icons to help focus on and visualize aspects of Brahman, rather than distinct beings. The ultimate goal in this practice is to transition past the use of icons, recognize the absolute symbolized by the icons, on the path to realizing the non-dual identity of one's Atman self and the Brahman. Popularized by Adi Shankara, many Panchayatana mandalas and temples have been uncovered that are from the Gupta Empire period, and one Panchayatana set from the village of Nand, about 24 kilometers from Ajmer, has been dated to belong to the Kushan Empire era preminus 300 CE. The Kushan period set includes Shiva, Vishnu, Surya, Brahma, and one deity whose identity is unclear. Yoga. Shiva is considered the great yogi who is totally absorbed in himself, the transcendental reality. He is the lord of yogis and the teacher of yoga to sages. As Shiva Dakshinamurthy states Stella Kramrish, he is the supreme guru who teaches in silence the oneness of one's innermost self Atman with the ultimate reality Brahman. Shiva is also an archetype for Samhara Sanskrit as Enhar, or dissolution, which includes transcendence of human misery by the dissolution of Maya, which is why Shiva is associated with yoga. The theory and practice of yoga in different styles has been a part of all major traditions of Hinduism, and Shiva has been the patron or spokesperson in numerous Hindu yoga texts. These contain the philosophy and techniques for yoga. These ideas are estimated to be from or after the late centuries of the first millennium CE, and have survived as yoga texts such as the Isvara Gita, literally Shiva's song, which Andrew Nishalson, a professor of Hinduism and Indian intellectual history, states have had a profound and lasting influence on the development of Hinduism. Other famed Shiva-related texts influenced Hatha Yoga, integrated monistic Advaita Vedanta ideas with yoga philosophy, and inspired the theoretical development of Indian classical dance. These include the Shiva Sutras, the Shiva Samhita, and those by the scholars of Kashmir Shaivism, such as the 10th century scholar Abhinavagupta. Abhinavagupta writes in his notes on the relevance of ideas related to Shiva and yoga by stating that people, occupied as they are with their own affairs, normally do nothing for others, and Shiva and yoga spirituality helps one look beyond, understand interconnectedness, and thus benefit both the individual and the world towards a more blissful state of existence. Trimurti. The Trimurti is a concept in Hinduism in which the cosmic functions of creation, maintenance, and destruction are personified by the forms of Brahma, the creator, Vishnu, the maintainer or preserver, and Shiva, the destroyer or transformer. These three deities have been called the Hindu triad or the Great Trinity. However, the ancient and medieval texts of Hinduism feature many triads of gods and goddesses, some of which do not include Shiva. Attributes. Third eye. Shiva is often depicted with a third eye with which he burned desire, to ashes, called Triambakam, Sanskrit Trimkam, which occurs in many scriptural sources. In classical Sanskrit, the word ambaka denotes an eye, and in the Mahabharata, Shiva is depicted as three-eyed, so this name is sometimes translated as having 3 eyes. However, in Vedic Sanskrit, the word Amba or Ambika means mother, and this early meaning of the word is the basis for the translation 3 mothers. These 3 mother goddesses, who are collectively called the Ambikas. Other related translations have been based on the idea that the name actually refers to the oblations given to Rudra, which according to some traditions were shared with the goddess Ambika. Crescent moon. Shiva bears on his head the crescent moon. The epithet Chandraskara, Sanskrit Cndr Shekhar, having the moon as his crest. Chandra equals moon, Sakara equals crest, crown refers to this feature. The placement of the moon on his head as a standard iconographic feature dates to the period when Rudra rose to prominence and became the major deity Rudra Shiva. The origin of this linkage may be due to the identification of the moon with Soma, and there is a hymn in the Rig Veda where Soma and Rudra are jointly implored, and in later literature, Soma and Rudra came to be identified with one another, as were Soma and the moon. Ashes Shiva iconography shows his body covered with ashes bhasma, vibhuti. The ashes represent a reminder. Matted hair. Shiva's distinctive hair style is noted in the epithets Jatan, the one with matted hair, and Kapardin, endowed with matted hair or wearing his hair wound in a braid in a shell like Kaparda fashion. A Kaparda is a cowrie shell or a braid of hair in the form of a shell, or, more generally, hair that is shaggy or curly. Blue throat. The epithet Nilakantha Sanskrit nilt, Nila equals blue, Kantha equals throat. Since Shiva drank the halahala poison churned up from the Samudra Manthan to eliminate its destructive capacity. Shocked by his act, Parvati squeezed his neck and stopped it in his neck to prevent it from spreading all over the universe, supposed to be in Shiva's stomach. However, the poison was so potent that it changed the color of his neck to blue. This attribute indicates that one can become Lord Shiva by swallowing the worldly poisons in terms of abuses and insults with equanimity while blessing those who give them. Meditating yogi. His iconography often shows him in a yoga pose, meditating sometimes on a symbolic Himalayan Mount Kailasha, as the Lord of Yoga. Sacred Ganga. The epithet Gangadhara, bearer of the river Ganga Ganges. The Ganga flows from the matted hair of Shiva. The Ganga, one of the major rivers of the country, is said to have made her abode in Shiva's hair. Tiger skin. Shiva is often shown seated upon a tiger's skin. Serpents. Shiva is often shown garlanded with a snake. Trident. Shiva typically carries a trident called Trishula. The trident is a weapon or a symbol in different Hindu texts. As a symbol, the Trishul represents Shiva's three aspects of creator, preserver, and destroyer, or alternatively it represents the equilibrium of three gunas of sattva, rajas and tamas. Drum, a small drum shaped like an hourglass, is known as a damaru. This is one of the attributes of Shiva in his famous dancing representation known as Nataraja. A specific hand gesture mudra called damaru hasta Sanskrit for damaru hand is used to hold the drum. This drum is particularly used as an emblem by members of the Kapalika sect. Axe, parachute, and deer are held in Shiva's hands in Odisha and South Indian icons. Rosary beads. He is garlanded with or carries a string of rosary beads in his right hand, typically made of rudraksha. This symbolizes grace, mendicant life, and meditation. Nandi, Sanskrit. Enendin Nandin is the name of the bull that serves as Shiva's mount. Shiva's association with cattle is reflected in his name Pasupati or Pashupati Sanskrit, Pishupti, translated by Sharma as Lord of Cattle and by Kramrish as Lord of Animals, who notes that it is particularly used as an epithet of Rudra. Mount Kailash in the Himalayas is his traditional abode. In Hindu mythology, Mount Kailash is conceived as resembling a linga representing the center of the universe. Gana. The Ganas are attendants of Shiva and live in Kailash. They are often referred to as the Bhutaganas or ghostly hosts on account of their nature. Generally benign, except when their lord is transgressed against, they are often invoked to intercede with the Lord on behalf of the devotee. His son Ganesha was chosen as their leader by Shiva, hence Ganesha's title Ganapisa or Ganapati, Lord of the Ganas. Varanasi. Varanasi Benares is considered to be the city specially loved by Shiva and is one of the holiest places of pilgrimage in India. It is referred to, in religious contexts, as Kashi. Forms and depictions. According to Gavin Flood, Shiva is a god of ambiguity and paradox, whose attributes include opposing themes. The ambivalent nature of this deity is apparent in some of his names and the stories told about him. Destroyer and benefactor. In Yajurveda, two contrary sets of attributes for both malignant or terrifying Sanskrit, Rudra, and benign or auspicious Sanskrit, Siva forms can be found, leading Chakravarti to conclude that all the basic elements which created the complex Rudra Siva sect of later ages are to be found here. In the Mahabharata, Shiva is depicted as the standard of invincibility, might, and terror, as well as a figure of honor, delight, and brilliance. The duality of Shiva's fearful and auspicious attributes appears in contrasted names. The name Rudra reflects Shiva's fearsome aspects. According to traditional etymologies, the Sanskrit name Rudra is derived from the root rud, which means to cry, howl. Stella Kramrisch notes a different etymology connected with the adjectival form Rudra, which means wild, of Rudra nature, and translates the name Rudra as the wild one or the fierce god. R.K. Sharma follows this alternate etymology and translates the name as terrible. Hara is an important name that occurs 3 times in the Anushasanaparvan version of the Shiva Sahasranama, where it is translated in different ways each time it occurs, following a commentatorial tradition of not repeating an interpretation. Sharma translates the 3 as one who captivates, one who consolidates, and one who destroys. Kramrisch translates it as the ravisher. Another of Shiva's fearsome forms is as Kala time and Mahakala great time, which ultimately destroys all things. The name Kala appears in the Shiva Sahasranama, where it is translated by Ram Karan Sharma as the Supreme Lord of Time. Bhairava, terrible or frightful, is a fierce form associated with annihilation. In contrast, the name Sankara, beneficent or conferring happiness, reflects his benign form. This name was adopted by the great Vedanta philosopher Adi Shankara c. 788–820, who is also known as Shankaracharya. The name Sambhu Sanskrit, Shambhu swam on its own, Bu burn/shine, self-shining/shining on its own, also reflects this benign aspect. Ascetic and Householder. Shiva is depicted as both an ascetic yogi and as a householder grihastha, roles which have been traditionally mutually exclusive in Hindu society. When depicted as a yogi, he may be shown sitting and meditating. His epithet Mahayogi, the great yogi, Maha equals great, yogi equals one who practices yoga, refers to his association with yoga. While Vedic religion was conceived mainly in terms of sacrifice, it was during the epic period that the concepts of tapas, yoga, and asceticism became more important, and the depiction of Shiva as an ascetic sitting in philosophy. In some traditions, Shiva has daughters like the serpent goddess Manasa and Ashakasundari. According to Doniger, 2 regional stories depict demons Andhaka and Jalandhara as the children of Shiva who war with him, and are later destroyed by Shiva. Iconographic forms. The depiction of Shiva as Nataraja Sanskrit, Nataraja, Lord of Dance, is popular. The names Nartaka dancer and Nityan or eternal dancer appear in the Shiva Sahasranama. His association with dance and also with music is prominent in the Puranic period. In addition to the specific iconographic form known as Nataraja, various other types of dancing forms, Sanskrit and Artayamurti, are found in all parts of India, with many well-defined varieties in Tamil Nadu in particular. The 2 most common forms of the dance are the Tandava, which later came to denote the powerful and masculine dance as Kala Mahakala, associated with the destruction of the world. When it requires the world or universe to be destroyed, Shiva does it by the Tandava, and Lasya, which is graceful and delicate, and expresses emotions on a gentle level and is considered the feminine dance attributed to the goddess Parvati. Lasya is regarded as the female counterpart of Tandava. The Tandava Lasya dances are associated with the destruction creation of the world. Dakshinamurti literally describes a form murti of Shiva facing south Dakshina. This form represents Shiva in his aspect as a teacher of yoga, music, and wisdom, and giving exposition on the Shastras. This iconographic form for depicting Shiva in Indian art is mostly from Tamil Nadu. Elements of this motif can include Shiva seated upon a deer throne and surrounded by sages who are receiving his instruction. In the hymn of Manikavekahar's Tharuvasigam, he testifies that at Nataraja temple, Chidambaram had by the pre-Chola period. Nataraja is a significant visual interpretation of Brahman and a dance posture of Shiva. Sharada Srinivasan notes that Nataraja is described as Satsatananda, or being consciousness and bliss, in the Shaiva Siddhanta text Kanchatangaram Bage, resembling the Advaita doctrine, or abstract monism of Adi Shankara, which holds the individual self-Jivatman and supreme self-Paramatma to be one, while an earlier hymn to Nataraja by Manikavachakara. This may point to an osmosis of ideas in medieval India, states Srinivasan. An iconographic representation of Shiva called Ardhanarishvara shows him with one half of the body as male and the other half as female. Ardhanarishvara represents the synthesis of masculine and feminine energies of the universe Purusha and Prakriti, and illustrates how Shakti, the female principle of God, is inseparable from or the same as, according to some interpretations, Shiva, the male principle of God, and vice versa. According to Ellen Goldberg, the traditional Sanskrit name for this form is best translated as the Lord who is half woman, not as half man, half woman. Shiva is often depicted as an archer in the act of destroying the triple fortresses, Tripura, of the Asuras. Shiva's name Tripurantaka, ender of Tripura, refers to this important story. Lingam. The Linga Purana states, Shiva is signless, without color, taste, smell, that is beyond word or touch, without quality, motionless and changeless. The source of the universe is the signless, and all of the universe is the manifested linga, a union of unchanging principles and the ever-changing nature. The Linga Purana and Siva Gita text builds on this foundation. Linga. It is an important concept in Hindu texts, wherein linga is a manifested sign and nature of someone or something. It accompanies the concept of Brahman, which is invisible, signless, and existent principle, is formless or lingaless. sh. Upanishad states one of the three significations, the primary one of lingam as the imperishable Purusha, the absolute reality, where says the linga as sign, a mark that provides the existence of Brahman, thus the original meaning as sign. Furthermore, it says Shiva, the Supreme Lord, has no lyuga. Lyuga Sanskrit, IAST, lyuga meaning Shiva is transcendent, beyond any characteristic, and specifically the sign of gender. Apart from anthropomorphic images of Shiva, he is also represented in aniconic form of a lingam. These are depicted in various designs. One common form is the shape of a vertical rounded column in the center of a lipped, disc-shaped object, the yoni, symbolism for the goddess Shakti. In Shiva temples, the linga is typically present in its sanctum sanctorum and is the focus of vatari offerings such as milk, water, flower petals, fruit, fresh leaves, and rice. According to Munir Williams and Judith Greenberg, linga literally means mark, sign, or emblem, and also refers to a mark or sign from which the existence of something else can be reliably inferred. It implies the regenerative divine energy innate in nature, symbolized by Shiva. According to Sivananda Saraswati, Siva Lingam speaks unmistakable language of silence. I am one without a second, I am formless. Siva Lingam is only the outward symbol of formless being, Lord Siva, who is eternal, ever pure, immortal essence of this vast universe, who is your innermost self or Atman, and who is identical with the Supreme Brahman, states Sivananda Saraswati. Some scholars, such as Wendy Doniger and Rohit Dasgupta, view linga as merely a phallic symbol, although this interpretation is criticized by others, including Swami Vivekananda. According to Maurice Winternitz, the linga in the Shiva tradition is only a symbol of the productive and creative principle of nature as embodied in Shiva, and it has no historical trace in any obscene phallic cult. According to Sivananda Saraswati, Westerners who are curiously passionate and have impure understanding or intelligence incorrectly assume Siva Linga as a phallus or sex organ. Later on, the worship of the lingam originated from the famous hymn in the Atharva Veda Samhita sung in praise of the Upastampa, the sacrificial post. In that hymn, a description is found of the beginningless and endless stampa or scampa, and it is shown that the said scampa is put in place of the eternal Brahman. Just as the yajna sacrificial fire, its smoke, ashes, and flames, the soma plant, and the ox that used to carry on its back, the wood for the Vedic sacrifice gave place to the conceptions of the brightness of Shiva's body, his tawny matted hair, his blue throat, and the riding on the bull of the Shiva, the Upaskambha gave place in time to the Shiva Linga. In the text Linga Purana, the same hymn is expanded in the shape of stories, meant to establish the glory of the great Stambha and the superiority of Shiva as Mahadeva. The oldest known archaeological linga as an icon of Shiva is the Gudumalan lingam from 3rd century BCE. In Shaivism pilgrimage tradition, 12 major temples of Shiva are called Jyotirlinga, which means linga of light, and these are located across India. 5 faces. 5 is a sacred number for Shiva. One of his most important mantras has 5 syllables Namah Shivaya. Shiva's body is said to consist of 5 mantras, called the Panchabrahman. As forms of God, each of these have their own names and distinct iconography. These are represented as the 5 faces of Shiva and are associated in various texts with the 5 elements, the 5 senses, the 5 organs of perception, and the 5 organs of action. Doctrinal differences and possibly errors in transmission have resulted in some differences between texts in details of how these 5 forms are linked with various attributes. The overall meaning of these associations is summarized by Stella Kramrisch. Through these transcendent categories, Shiva, the ultimate reality, becomes the efficient and material cause of all that exists. According to the Panchabrahma Upanishad, one should know all things of the phenomenal world as of a 5-fold character, for the reason that the eternal verity of Shiva is of the character of the 5-fold Brahman. Panchabrahma Upanishad 31. Avatars. Puranic scriptures contain occasional references to literally portion or avatars of Shiva, but the idea of Shiva avatars is not universally accepted in Shaivism. The Linga Purana mentions 28 forms of Shiva which are sometimes seen as avatars. However, such mention is unusual and the avatars of Shiva is relatively rare in Shaivism compared to the well-emphasized concept of Vishnu avatars in Vaishnavism. Some Vaishnava literature reverentially links Shiva to characters in its mythologies. For example, in the Hanuman Chalisa, Hanuman is identified as the 11th avatar of Shiva. The Bhagavata Purana and the Vishnu Purana claim sage Durvasa to be a portion of Shiva. Some medieval-era writers have called the Advaita Vedanta philosopher Adi Shankara an incarnation of Shiva. Temple festivals, 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 There is a Shivaratri in every lunar month on its 13th night/14th day, but once a year in late winter February/March and before the arrival of spring marks Maha Sivaratri, which means the great night of Shiva. Maha Sivaratri is a major Hindu festival, but one that is solemn and theologically marks a remembrance of overcoming darkness and ignorance in life and the world, and meditation about the polarities of existence of Shiva, and a devotion to humankind. It is observed by reciting Shiva-related poems, chanting prayers, remembering Shiva, fasting, doing yoga, and meditating on ethics and virtues such as self-restraint, honesty, non-injury to others, forgiveness, introspection, self-repentance, and the discovery of Shiva. The ardent devotees keep awake all night. Others visit one of the Shiva temples or go on pilgrimage. Those who visit temples offer milk, fruits, flowers, fresh leaves, and sweets to the lingam. Some communities organize special dance events to mark Shiva as the Lord of Dance, with individual and group performances. According to Jones and Ryan, Maha Sivaratri is an ancient Hindu festival which probably originated around the 5th century. Another major festival involving Shiva worship is Kartik Purnima, commemorating Shiva's victory on the demons Tripurasura. Across India, various Shiva temples are illuminated throughout the night. Shiva icons are carried in procession in some places. ﷺ is a festival observed in Kerala dedicated to Shiva. It is believed that on this day, Parvati met Shiva after her long penance, and Shiva took her as his wife. On this day, Hindu women performs the Thiruvathirakali accompanied by Thiruvathirapattu folk songs about Parvati and her longing and penance for Shiva's affection. Regional festivals dedicated to Shiva include the Chittorai festival in Madurai around April/May, one of the largest festivals in South India, celebrating the wedding of Meenakshi Parvati and Shiva. The festival is one where both the Vaishnava and Shaiva communities join the celebrations, because Vishnu gives away his sister Meenakshi in marriage to Shiva. Some Shaktism-related festivals revere Shiva along with the goddess considered primary and supreme. These include festivals dedicated to Annapurna such as Annakutta, and those related to Durga. In Himalayan regions such as Nepal, as well as in northern, central and western India, the festival of Tej is celebrated by girls and women in the monsoon season in honor of goddess Parvati, with group singing, dancing, and by offering prayers in Parvati Shiva temples. The ascetic, Vedic, and Tantric sub-traditions related to Shiva, such as those that became ascetic warriors during the Islamic rule period of India, celebrate the Kumbh Mela festival. This festival cycles every 12 years in 4 pilgrimage sites within India, with the event moving to the next site after a gap of 3 years. The biggest is in Prayaga, renamed Allahabad, during the Mughal rule era, where millions of Hindus of different traditions gather at the confluence of rivers Ganges and Yamuna. In the Hindu tradition, the Shiva-linked ascetic warriors Nagas get the honor of starting the event by entering the Sangam first for bathing and prayers. In Pakistan, major Shivaratri celebration occurs at the Umarkot Shiv Mandir in the Umarkot. The 3-day Shivaratri celebration at the temple is attended by around 250,000 people. Beyond the Indian subcontinent and Hinduism. Maritime Southeast Asia. In Indonesian Shaivism, the popular name for Shiva has been Batara Guru, which is derived from Sanskrit Bataraka, which means noble lord. He is conceptualized as a kind spiritual teacher, the first of all gurus in Indonesian Hindu texts, mirroring the Dakshinamurti aspect of Shiva in the Indian subcontinent. However, the Batara Guru has more aspects than the Indian Shiva, as the Indonesian Hindus blended their spirits and heroes with him. Batara Guru's wife in Southeast Asia is the same Hindu deity Durga, who has been popular since ancient times, and she too has a complex character with benevolent and fierce manifestations, each visualized with different names such as Uma, Sri Kali, and others. Shiva has been called Sadasiva, Paramasiva, Mahadeva in benevolent forms, and Kala, Bhairava, Mahakala in his fierce forms. The Indonesian Hindu texts present the same philosophical diversity of Shaiva traditions found in the Indian subcontinent. However, among the texts that have survived into the contemporary era, the more common are of those of Shaiva Siddhanta, locally also called Śiva Siddhanta. During the pre-Islamic period on the island of Java, Shaivism and Buddhism were considered very close and allied religions, though not identical religions. The medieval era Indonesian literature equates Buddha with Siwa Shiva and Janardana Vishnu. This tradition continues in predominantly Hindu Bali, Indonesia in the modern era, where Buddha is considered the younger brother of Shiva. Central Asia. The worship of Shiva became popular in Central Asia through the influence of the Hephalite Empire and Kushan Empire. Shaivism was also popular in Sogdia and the Kingdom of Yushan, as found from the wall painting from Penjikent on the river Zervashan. In this depiction, Shiva is portrayed with a sacred halo and a sacred thread Yajnapaveeta. He is clad in tiger skin while his attendants are wearing Sogdian dress. Dian dress. Dian dress. A panel from Dandan Oilik shows Shiva in his Trimurti form with Shakti kneeling on her right thigh. Another site in the Taklamakan desert depicts him with 4 legs, seated cross-legged on a cushioned seat supported by 2 bulls. It is also noted that the Zoroastrian wind god eːʋꯙ took on the iconographic appearance of Shiva. Sikhism. The Japji Sahib of the Guru Granth Sahib says, the Guru is Shiva, the Guru is Vishnu and Brahma, the Guru is Parvati and Lakshmi. In the same chapter, it also says, Shiva speaks, and the Siddhas listen. In Dasam Granth, Guru Gobind Singh has mentioned 2 avatars of Rudra, Dattatreya avatar and Parasnath avatar. Buddhism, Buddhism, Tantric Buddhism. Shiva is mentioned in the Buddhist Tantras and worshipped as the fierce deity Mahakala in Vajrayana, Chinese esoteric, and Tibetan Buddhism. In the cosmologies of Buddhist Tantras, Shiva is depicted as passive, with Shakti being his active counterpart, Shiva as Prajna and Shakti as Upaya. Chinese Buddhism. In China and Taiwan, Shiva, better known there as Mahasvara Chinese, Da Zai Zai Tian, Pinyin, Dezization, or Chinese, Mo Zai Shu Luo Tian Pinyin Moxishul Yuoshan is considered one of the 20 devas Chinese, or Shizhu Tian, Pinyin, or Shizhushan, or the 24 devas Chinese, or Shizhu Tian. Statues of him are often enshrined in the Mahavira halls of Chinese Buddhist temples along with the other devas. In addition, he is also regarded as one of 33 manifestations of Avalokitesvara in the Lotus Sutra. In Mahayana Buddhist cosmology, Mahasvara resides in Akanistha, highest of the Suddhavasa pure abodes wherein anagami non-returners who are already on the path to arhathood and who will attain enlightenment are born. Japanese Buddhism. Depictions, one of the 7 lucky gods in Japan, is considered to be evolved from Shiva. The god enjoys an exalted position as a household deity in Japan and is worshipped as the god of wealth and fortune. The name is the Japanese equivalent of Mahakala, the Buddhist name for Shiva. In contemporary culture. Shiva is depicted in art, films, books, tattoos, etc. He has been referred to as the god of cool things and a bona fide rock hero. Popular films include the Gujarati language movie Har Har Mahadev, the Kannada movie Ganj Gauri, and well-known books include Amish Tripathi's Shiva trilogy, which has sold over 1 million copies. On television, Devan Ki Dev, Mahadev, a television serial about Lord Shiva on the Life OK channel, was among the most watched shows at its peak popularity. A 90s television series of DD National titled Om Namah Shivaయ was also based on legends of Shiva.